So when did the Exodus happen? Going by the biblical chronology, right? Edwin Thiele was the mastermind of the biblical chronology. Not that it hadn't been done before, it has been done, and we're talking about the same biblical chronology. He didn't come up with anything new. What he did was he managed to establish it on scientific principles, linking it up, correlating it with known observances in the astronomical record and in the archaeological record and in the inscriptional record from these countries. And I'll show you exactly how he did that. He was the first one to really put it on a scientific basis. The chronology turns out to be the same, right? The chronology is what it is in the Bible. The earliest point in history that is fixed, and I know a lot of you probably are not aware of this. You go to a museum, like I did, and they've got all these nice dates up there. Wow, 1562 BC. That's old, right? And you think, wow, they must know this. They don't know this. They're guessing. If you ask an expert, he will have to tell you something because he's an expert. They're not going to say, I don't know. So they have all kind of established a agreement on history, sort of like taking a vote. Well, science doesn't really work that way. And I want you to be aware, they have moved the date of the Exodus up 2 centuries. How can you do that if the timeline is fixed? We know all about the ancient timeline. Because we don't. Anything 664 BC is our first really fixed date in history. Everything before that, you're lucky if you're within 100 to 200 years, until now. Because we have a wonderful new tool that allows us to investigate and fix these dates. 664 BC, Ashurbanipal of Assyria invaded Thebes, Egypt. And there's so many synchronizations with so many dates listed in the Assyrian records and in the Egyptian records. So we have this date down. Ashurbanipal also is not just a great warrior, he was a great reader, and wherever he conquered, he would take all of their cuneiform tablets, and he formed a great library in Nineveh, which was conquered later on, and the desert sands filled it up eventually. But cuneiform, it can't be destroyed unless you jump up and down on it and pulverize it. So they found 20,000 tablets, and they gave the entire history of the ancient Middle East, including the king list of Assyria. So we're going to talk about king lists. Remember I said there are no fixed dates before 664, or there were not? So you have these king lists. The way they would keep time is they would write things down and say, this happened in the 7th year or the 5th year of the reign of this king. So a king list, you have the succession of kings and the number of years that they reigned. Usually you have that. The succession of kings and the number of years each one reigned. So that's great. You got a little piece of history here, but we still don't know when it happened. So you got a little piece of history that's kind of floating up and down on the timeline. All right, so we need to learn how to fix those things, and that's what a synchronization is. King Ashurbanipal sacked Thebes in 664 BC and killed Pharaoh Taharqa. That event that is fixed links up and anchors the king list of Assyria with the king list of Egypt. So you could count back and forth on either one of those king lists from that fixed anchor point. This is the way we should be doing it. Fixed anchor point, synchronized king list, and then you can speculate on what the ancient record says and whether it matches what happened at that time, for example, in the Bible. And this is how you do that. There's the anchor up there in the 38th year of King Ashurbanipal, and of course it ended the reign of Taharqa, and we're going to count back like 26 years to the end of Shabitku's reign and count back another, 16 years to 706 BC, the end of Shabaka's reign, and then count back another 15 years or so to the end of Chewbacca's reign in Star Wars. And don't go telling anyone I said that. It wasn't really Chewbacca, that was just to see if you were paying attention. It was Usur-matre-pi, who was the king of Nubia, who invaded Egypt and took it over, really, and then reigned for 11 more years. But it's a perfect example of how we know when he took over Egypt. We know right down to the exact year when Usur-matre-pi invaded from Nubia and took over. And so that would also fix to the Nubian king list. So that's the way it works. Now the ancients, here's the new tool that we have that is absolutely fabulous tool. It is called astronomical retrocalculation. The ancients would keep records of what happened in the heavens because they were portents. And it says it in the Bible, in the Genesis 1st chapter, let there be signs and let there be lights in heaven, let them be for signs and for seasons. And all of the ancient world would study the heavens and they would write it down, and if there was something significant like an eclipse, they'd write it down and put in what year of the reign of that king it happened. Well, you know, we can predict eclipses now. It is just mathematics. The orbit of the planets and the sun, we can predict them. Well, guess what? We can also retrocalculate them in the past. So if the ancients wrote down a celestial event that specifically enough, distinctively enough, we can now find that. I have the astronomy program. I can go back and find it. So let's take an example. This is Sagale of Guzana. Now, it's called the Sagale solar eclipse. This is from the Babylonian records. Sagale was the eponym. That means he was the bureaucrat that would stay up all night drinking coffee and write down any significant celestial event that happened. And he wrote down in the 7th year of Ashur-dan III. He also wrote what was going on at the time in the city. So an eclipse of the sun took place. So this is his eclipse, and it happened what? June 15th, 763 BC. Okay, well, that's in the Assyrian king list. Ashur-dan. So what we're going to do is we're going to count back from him, count back in the king list to Shalmaneser III, who reigned from 858 BC. Okay, so in his 6th year, which would be 853, remember you're going backwards in time. You count backwards from year 0. So if you're going back, you add. If you're going forward, you subtract. So he defeated an alliance of kings in Canaan, including King Ahab. So we're back in the Bible, aren't we? Which ended his reign. And we can calculate Ahab's reign from the Biblical Chronology, 874 to 853. And the thing that's important about this, it matches. The astronomical recalculation matches the biblical chronology, which means that that chronology is correct. Now, we knew that, but there are a lot of people out there that don't know that, and they need to know that. And it also makes me feel good. It makes me feel good that we can prove the Bible chronology is true. So the king list we're going to go further back. Now there's 2 king lists because there was a split kingdom, right? The kingdom split. Judah in the south, Israel in the north, 10 tribes in the north and 2 in the south. So we're going to count back both of those king lists to 930 because we have in the Bible the year that Solomon, he died in 930. And that would be the date of the schism. His son Rehoboam took over in the south, and Jeroboam, which was a rebellious official, seized the north. So let's count back from Solomon's reign, because it said in the 480th year after the children of Israel came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign, he began to build the house of the Lord, the temple at Jerusalem, the first temple. Okay, you see how this works? You understand that? It's just counting. That's all it is. Any one of you could do it. If you had the materials I sat down in front of you, here, count back on this king list. Here it is, count back. 480 years, you could do this.